Hi, welcome back to Frankie Sparks and the Lucky Charm as we read Chapter 4, The Perfect Trap. The next morning was a Saturday. Frankie got up early and went to her invention lab. It had been a closet, but her parents had helped her convert it into a special place for designing and building her inventions. She rolled her chair out from under her desk, sat on it, and started slowly spinning herself around. Normally, when she invented, she was inventing to help someone, like when she made a card holder to help Maya, who'd gotten nervous on stage for her magic show, or when Frankie invented a way for Buttercup, her dog, to feed herself. She liked being helpful. That was different. The trap was meant to catch the leprechaun. It was for a leprechaun, but it wasn't meant to help it. Frankie would have felt a little bit bad about that if she had thought that leprechauns were real. When she invented it for people, she thought about that person and what that person needed. She took out her inventing and ideas notebook, opened to the list of things she knew about leprechauns, and read it over. Some of the details were more important than others. She circled the facts she thought were the most important. They came from Ireland. They like green places, lots of trees and grass and stuff. They are small. They wear green. They like gold. They are tricky. They are smart. Most have beards, job finding shoes, and hobby hiding gold at the end of the rainbow. When she was designing the trap, she would need to think of these things and incorporate them into her design. Next, she decided to think about what she knew about traps. She drew a picture of a box and a stick holding it up. The stick had a string attached to it. Under the box was a treat. She had seen this kind of trap in cartoons. When the bunny or whatever went to get the treat, the person pulled the string and the stick fell down. The box fell too and trapped the bunny. That was how the trap was supposed to work anyway. Sometimes in cartoons, she watched things got a little silly. From her drawing, she knew that she needed 3 things for her trap. She wrote these down in her notebook as well. Number 1, some sort of bait to attract the leprechaun. Number 2, something to set off the trap. And number 3, something to make sure the leprechaun can't get out once the trap goes off. The obvious choice for bait was gold, but she didn't have any gold. She wondered if leprechauns liked pennies. She had lots of those. She kept them in her piggy bank by her bed. Every time she found one, she dropped it in. When she had enough, she was going to buy a soldering iron, a special tool for connecting things, like in electronics. It was almost as useful as duct tape. Aunt Nichelle worked as an engineer, and she said she'd teach Frankie how to use it. Then Frankie could hook up wires and batteries and lights and stuff. It was hard to save money, especially when Wink's Magic and Games Emporium sold such cool magic tricks, but she was doing her best. Anyway, she didn't want to lose her pennies, but since leprechauns weren't real, that wasn't really a risk. She would plan on using pennies for bait unless she thought of something better. The other 2 parts of the trap were the bigger challenges. How big did the trap need to be? She knew leprechauns were small, but how small? It wasn't like anyone had ever measured one. Frankie remembered the so-called leprechaun hole under the shed at Maya's house. Frankie was able to see maybe 6 inches into the hole. So Frankie decided that the leprechaun mustn't be any taller than 6 inches. She wrote that down on her paper. Now she knew that the trap had to be bigger than 6 inches in any direction. Finally, the hardest part, leprechauns were smart. They wouldn't fall for any old box and stick. She needed something much more clever. Luckily, Frankie was pretty smart too. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath in. When she opened her eyes, she grabbed a new piece of paper and began to draw. When she finished, she clapped her hands together. She had drawn a treasure chest with its lid open. A small cauldron hung from the top of the chest, filled with gold coins. The cauldron rested on top of what looked like clouds. This was the genius of the trap. She would put a layer of cotton across the top of the chest. It would be stiff enough to stay in place and even to have the cauldron touch it. But as soon as someone like a leprechaun stepped into it, he would fall right through. The pennies were her bait, and the cauldron would be what caused the top to drop and trap the leprechaun inside. She had met all three of her requirements. Perfect. Frankie bit her lip. Well, maybe not quite perfect. She didn't believe in leprechauns, that was true, but 1 in a million chance that they were real, and she caught one. She didn't want it to get hurt. Plus, an animal might get into the trap by accident. Frankie would have to add more cotton to the bottom of the box so that whatever landed in it would have a safe, soft landing. She'd add a small dish for water, too. Now the design was perfect. All she had to do was not catch a leprechaun.